Welcome back to Miss Burkhart's math class. Remember to have your printed notes with you so that you can fill them in as you watch this video, and of course a pencil to write with. And remember, you can always pause the video if you need some more time to write your notes, and you can always rewind and replay anytime so that you can rewatch parts that you may have missed or just to watch it again to make sure you fully understand it. Today we're going to talk about Standard 6.1, representing relationships between quantities using ratios, and use appropriate notations such as A over B, A colon B, and A to B. So specifically in today's lesson, you will learn what a ratio is, 3 different ways to write the ratio, and how to write a ratio given a practical situation. So let's get started.
Here are some everyday life examples of ratios. Speed limits. You see these on the side of the road when you're riding down the road in a car. And what does it mean? Well, it says speed limit of 25. It means 25 miles per hour. That's a ratio, which is comparing miles to hours. In this case, it says if your car traveled at that same speed, that same rate, you would travel 25 miles per hour in 1 hour. 25 miles in 1 hour if you went at that same speed. Now, a speed limit of 55 says if you traveled at that same rate, which is obviously faster than 25, then that says you would travel 55 miles per hour, 55 miles in 1 hour. So obviously you would travel farther because you're going a little faster in that same hour. Or let's say the unit we did just finished, 75%. That is actually a ratio because what is it comparing? It's comparing two things. It's saying 75 out of 100 total pieces. So that's a ratio. You're comparing two things. Sometimes you might see or hear about a student to teacher ratio. And that's just comparing how many students in a class to comparing that to how many teachers in a class. In this particular picture, there are 6 students and 1 teacher, so the ratio is 6 to 1. Or now that we're near Halloween, you see all these big bags of candy everywhere. And so this one is a ratio because it's comparing how many pieces of candy you get in a bag to the total cost for that bag. So in this case, the ratio is 135 pieces of candy for $15. So those are just some examples, and then there's one more here. Recipes. Anytime you're cooking anything, all of these are ratios. It's comparing, let's say, for example, how many cups of sugar you would use to how many cups of flour. So this ratio would be, well, for every 2 cups of sugar, you would use 2.5 cups of flour for this particular ratio recipe. So what is a ratio? And here's where you're going to want to fill in your notes. A ratio is simply a comparison of two quantities, comparing two things, comparing two amounts. However, the quantities, whatever wording makes sense to you. It's showing the relationship between two items. So just like we had in our example back here, students to teachers, that's comparing two things, students to teachers, number of students to number of teachers, miles to travel per hour. It's a comparison of two things. So if you want to, you may want to pause the video and fill in your notes of your definition of a ratio at this time. All right, so then how do we write ratios? How can we express those two numbers that we're comparing on paper? And there's actually 3 different ways we can write those two numbers. The first one is in what we call fraction form. It looks like a fraction. So we'd write the first number on the top, the numerator, have your fraction bar, and then the second number on the bottom in the denominator. So the first way is fraction form. Another way we can write those two different numbers we're comparing is by separating the numbers with a colon. A colon are those 2 dots you see here. So we'd have the first number and then the colon and then the second number that we're comparing. The third way is really how we say it. It's using the word two. So instead of using the colon to separate the two numbers, we're now going to use the word two. So it would be, we'd write the first number, then write the word two, and then the second number. The important thing you really need to remember is that the order of the numbers matters. It matters which way you put the numbers, which one is first and which one is second. So let's do this with an example. If we take this picture here and we look at part A, it says, and this is also in your notes, so please make sure you fill these things in as well on your notes. The first example, write the ratio of footballs to basketballs. So looking at our picture over here, it says we want to write the ratio, and notice the order it wants us to write the ratio of footballs first and then the number of basketballs. So that is what is really important. So we're going to say, all right, we're going to do the footballs is going to be the first number, and then basketballs will be our second number. And I like to actually write this out. And so the first way we're going to practice using fraction form first. Footballs, and I'll just abbreviate, footballs over basketballs. So what's my first number? So how many footballs are there? Well, we count them. So there are 5 footballs. And then how many basketballs? 2 basketballs. So that's how we would write this ratio as a fraction form, 5 over 2. 5 to 2. 5 footballs to 2 basketballs. Now let's write it using the colon. Again, our first number is the number of footballs, which was 5. And then we put a colon, the 2 dots. And then we put our number of basketballs, which was 2. So again, this was 5 footballs to 2 basketballs. That's how we can write the same representation, same relationship using the colon. And now a third way, just using the word 2 instead of the colon. So again, our footballs is first, number of footballs is 5. Then we're going to write the word 2, and then we'll write how many basketballs. 5 to 2. And that's actually how you say all of these relationships. 5 to 2, 5 to 2, and of course 5 to 2. So now let's try and write it in a different way. Looking at the same picture, write a ratio of basketballs to footballs. So now which one are we writing first? Now we are going to write basketballs first. So this is going to be our first number. And then footballs will be our second number. So again, I'm going to write that on my paper just so I remember, and I want you to write this as well for your notes. So now I'm putting basketballs first. Why? Because it said the word first. Basketballs came first. Basketballs to footballs. So now I count. How many basketballs are there? Right? There's 2 basketballs. Put my fraction bar. And how many footballs? There are 5. So now the ratio is 2 to 5 because now it's asking for the ratio to be in terms of basketballs to footballs. We just flipped it. So again, the order matters. Now we're going to write that same ratio with the colon. So again, basketballs first, put the 2 dots, and then footballs. Right? And then using the word 2 instead of the colon. 2, and then the word 2, and then the number of footballs. So again, writing it as a fraction form, using the colon, and using the word 2 to separate these 2 numbers. Now let's try this one. I've put the picture back down here, so now it says write the ratio of what? Of basketballs to what? To all. So it's a little different. Now I want all as my second number. So this basketballs is going to be first, the first number, and all is going to be the second number. So let's write that down. So I'm going to put basketballs, and this is our fraction form, to all. So this could be how many basketballs do we have? 2. Write our fraction bar, and then how many are there all together? So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7. Notice the basketballs were included in the all, the total number that we have all together. Those two are in there. So now let's write it as a using the colon. So we're going to have 2 basketballs to 7 all together. And now we're just going to write it using the word 2. 2, and then 2, 7. 2 to 7. So you've got to be careful. So the things to remember, the order matters. It will tell you what order to write the ratio. The numbers are in a specific order. And then things to also not get tripped up are by the all. That means all together. Now, let's try some examples. Remember, order of the numbers matters. So this one says, write the ratios for each example all 3 ways, as a fraction, using the colon, and using the word 2. All of this is also in your notes, so make sure you are filling these in. This one says, write the ratio of what? So here's our word, here's ratios, of what? And the first one is going to be total pieces of candy in the bag to the total cost. So what's our first number? So we have the number of pieces of candy is going to be our first number. And what's our second number? Right, the total cost. So let's write that down. What is the total number of pieces of candy according to the bag? 135. And then what's the total cost? $15. So we have 135 pieces of candy to 15. Now let's write it with a colon. 135, use the colon, and then 15. And now use it with the word 2. Write it instead of the colon. We're going to say 135, use the word 2, and then 15. 3 different ways to write the same representation of the 2 numbers. All right, now let's take a look at this one. Write the ratio of pennies to all coins. There's that all again. What's the first number going to be? It said, here's our ratio. What do we want to write the ratio as? We want to write it of pennies as our first number. Should be the number of pennies. And then to all coins. Okay, so we're going to say number of pennies. Whoops, I can spell pennies. To all coins. So how many pennies are there? 1, 2. 2 pennies. And how many total coins are there? Does that include the pennies? Yes, it does. It wants the total number of coins. So how many coins are there? We have 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 total coins. Now, just for fun, could I simplify this ratio, 2 to 8, just like I could simplify a fraction? Yeah, let's just do that for fun. I know, isn't that fun? I think it's fun. And so we can divide them both by 2. It's a common factor I can divide them both by. And what do you get? 1 to 4. So that would be saying that I could simplify it to, for every 1 penny, there would be 4 total coins. Is that true? I'll show you here. If we divided that in half, right? So that would be 1 penny for every 4 coins. Just a little side note. Wanted to show you that. But let's go back and write it as a colon to what? Yep, 8. And now let's use the word 2 and then to 8. Excellent. Now here's a little bit of a tricky one. Now instead of pictures, it just gives you the information in a sentence. So you could draw a picture to help you see it instead. In a shelter there are 3 dogs and 5 cats. So it didn't give you a picture, it just described it in a sentence. Now let's look at our sentence here. Our next sentence says write the ratio of what? Cats to dogs. I'm going to write that out. Cats over dogs. Now, I have to be careful with this. Why? Can you see why? Look at the sentence. What came first in the sentence? 3 dogs. Did I want to put dogs first? Nope, it asks for cats. So how many cats are there? That's our first number according to what it asked. It said, what is the ratio of cats to dogs? So how many cats are there? There are 5 cats, so that will be our first number. And how many dogs? 3 dogs. Now, again, if you think about it, if you were to have drawn the picture, and I am not an artist, but we're going to say here are 3 dogs, right? Here are my dogs. Those are their floppy ears. You can't tell those are dogs? I don't understand that. And what about 5 cats? So here are my 5 cats. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cats. These are my cats. See my cat ears? Those look like cats, right? Of course they do. Now, if I had the picture, would I be able to say, oh, okay, there's how many cats are there? I would go and count my 5 cats, right? And I'd put 5 first and 3 dogs. So don't let the fact that it's in a sentence confuse you. You can always go and draw a picture of it to make sure. But be careful with the order. All right, so then let's go back and fill it in our other ways using the colon, 5 to 3, and then with the word 5 and the word 2, and then the number 3. And lastly, here's our last example. In a class, there are 12 students. 4 of the students are boys. Write the ratio of girls to boys. I want you to pause the video and try this one on your own first. And feel free to draw the picture out to help you see it better. Because remember what it's asking. It says write the ratio of what? Girls to boys. Pause the video, and I want you to try this one on your own and then come back. Okay, so how did you do? Did you see some of the tricky parts? Did you notice in here how it said the word for instead of the number written out as just the number for it, wrote out the word for? That can be tricky. So, how many of you caught that? If you didn't, now you know to be aware of it, right? So if there are 12 students, did it tell you how many girls there are? Because it said it wanted to write the ratio as girls to boys. But then you can say, but it didn't tell you how many girls there were. Could you figure it out? Yes. So how could you figure it out? How many of you drew a picture to help you figure it out? Right? So maybe you just said, okay, I know there's 12 students. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 students. And then it says 4 of them are boys. Okay, so I'm going to make 4 of these. 1 boy, 2 boys, 3 boys, 4 boys. So then you would assume the rest are girls. So how many girls are there? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are G's. 6, 7, 8. 8 girls. So if 4 of them are boys, you know that the rest of the students would be girls. Okay? So now we can write our ratio. Now, how many of you may have solved it this way? You said, oh, well, I know if there's 12 students and there are 4 boys, I'm going to take those boys out, and what would be left, 8, would be how many girls there would be. Because this was how many boys. Now we can write our ratio. So how many girls are there? 8 girls. And how many boys? 4 boys. And you could simplify that one too, right? But we'll keep going for now and write our other way using the colon. 8 girls, 4 boys. And then using our word to. 8 girls, 2, 4 boys. So sometimes you're going to need to do a little bit extra figuring to be able to write your ratio. And so now it's your turn. This page is the last page in your notes. And make sure to write them the 3 different ways. If you don't remember what they are, go back in the video and rewatch it just to make sure.
So in today's lesson, you learned what a ratio is, the 3 different ways to write a ratio, and also how to write a ratio given a practical situation. So great job! Remember to make sure you have your notes in your binder and bring your binder to class, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.